There is many-sided activity in a coastal economic zone which should be the subject of the rigid control from the state in the name of functional services. The control should assume following kinds of activity within a coastal zone: lawful extraction of sea natural resources, illegal extraction of sea natural resources, transportation of cargoes by the sea, research and prospecting works, naval doctrines and moving of the fighting ships, transportation of cargoes by air, salvage operations, protection of frontier by frontier service, contraband, protection of the closed water areas, intelligence service activity. The control of these kinds of activity should be distributed between several functional services, as the supervising should act: the Ministry of Defense in the name of the Navy Fleet, the Frontier Service, the Protection Service of Sea Natural Resources, Ships Movement Control Service, and the Organization of Salvage Operations. Objects of the control from outside services are ships of fishing fleet conducting lawful fishing, that is, within the allocated quotas and in the taken away interval of time; fishing fleet's ships conducting illegal craft, that is, over the allocated limits or out of the sight; ship purchase, that is, ships of other states or without any lawful basis for extractions of bioresources; transport vessels, transit, cabotage, which have lawful basis for swimming; transport vessels purchase, the fighting ships and planes, the boundary ships and boats; research monitoring objects over water and airborne; the flying machines having the lawful basis, helicopters and the frontier services planes, transport, saving, monitoring; flying machines, infringers of state border, drugs, bioresources, etc. All objects on loyalty degree can be broken into three groups: the legislative objects having the lawful basis for stay in the economic zone, the objects having the lawful basis for stay but having no wish to designate their presence, the objects who categorically have no wish to designate their presence. They are the basic object of the control. Moreover, they can resort to false information imposing. The technical system is obliged to give the exhaustive information on any object which is on the territory of the economic zone. Main principles of the organization of technical system of the exhaustive control of a coastal economic zone are formulated as follows. The monitoring system should be based on uniform means for all organizations and reports of an exchange of the information. Reception of the information from any object is based on two ways: voluntary and compulsory. Objects of the control have various hardware. The monitoring system should fix object with any hardware, including absent or switched off. The system of the total control of the coastal economic zone consists of three subsystems: detection and identification subsystems, communication subsystems, subsystems of gathering of the information, processing and distribution. The basis of functioning of system is detection of objects and their primary identification. Thus, the information of any object received by any source is the general for all functional services. The radar stations of various functional purpose are the basic identification equipment. Navigating radar stations work practically always as they provide safety of swimming. Survey radar stations are available on objects of the Navy fleet and on some objects of the Frontier Service. Coastal posts of the Navy fleet are also equipped by radar stations. Some flying machines of the Navy fleet and Ministry of Defense have radar stations, which can be involved in a subsystem of detection and identification of objects. The most economic kind of finder for today are the pilotless flying machines equipped with the video cameras. At work in the conditions of polar night or nighttime, they can be equipped by infrared finders. Piloted flying machines, helicopters or light motor aircraft can also find out objects with visual detection. From specific devices of detection, it is possible to allocate stations of radio engineering investigation of power structures. All legislative objects report their location on corresponding service through a communicational system in an automatic mode. In the report, it is underlined not only the location, but also location of all objects which have been found out by radar station or visually near to a reporting object. Legislative objects are interested in such procedure as they provide competitive advantage, for example at fishery or race safety. Identification of objects is the following problem after detection. Identification answers the question "Who are you?" The answer to this question will give the exhaustive information concerning the purpose, technical possibilities, etc. on databases of each functional service. In a report mode, legislative objects transfer not only their coordinates and the coordinates of the surrounding objects, but also identifying information, their number. Identification of objects in a coastal economic zone is especially important for a fight variant of suppression of illegal activity, that is, using or threat of using of weapons. The guarantor of protection of interests can be only the object having arms, that is, flying machines and ships of the Navy fleet and Frontier Service. They should have technical possibility of identification of any object. Today, the equipment of the identification established on all objects having arms is for this purpose used. The given technical system should provide protection of an economic zone also in pre-disputed and in disputed situations, which can develop for a very short time interval. In it, identification should go first of all on the principle friend for. Thus, installation of transponders on native objects or the objects having the lawful basis for long economic activities in the zone, fishing, rented for coasting, navigation, etc., will provide first reception of the exhaustive identifying information at any moment on any object. Secondly, it can be made on considerable removal from object up to 40 kilometers. Thirdly, it will allow to supervise reliability of the transferred information on communication systems. Fourthly, such transponders should be established on objects of the big load carrying capacity for a special case. The identifying information can be received from pilotless flying machines because they transfer video in real time. In the functional center, the received image is analyzed by the special program on recognition or by experts who compare it with the other available information and then identify it. Thus, offer technical decisions will allow to receive the greatest possible volume of the information at the expense of use of all potentially possible sources of the information on detection and identification of objects in an economic zone. The communication subsystem is based on existing technical communication systems with use of satellite channels and a departmental radio communication of the Ministry of Defense, a Frontier Service and the Ministry of Emergency Measures. Communication systems are departmental, that is, every functional service has its own communication system. Completions of existing systems and the automatic transfer to a report mode are possible. It is obvious that during the pre-disputed and disputed periods of time, regulations of works of systems will be right another. First of all, for power departments. In the conditions of real counteraction to technical systems, Ministry of Defense and Frontier Service, that is, to statement of hindrances, false information imposing, role and value of technical systems of power departments, which initially assume influence from outside the opponent, essentially increase. Regulations of work and information interchange reports during the disputed period should be put in system without fail. For a communication system and detection system of the Navy fleet, it is transition to other frequency alarm area. For state identification system, use of the protected modes of the identification. All other systems don't change their regulations of work. Gathering and processing subsystems are especially departmental. The information received by them is general for all departmental subsystems, with some restrictions for objects of the Navy fleet and Frontier Service. Ships and coastal radar stations reporting results of detection and the identification are the basic source of the information for a Navy fleet subsystem. Pilotless flying machines of various departments hand over the received information to launchers or directly to departmental centers. For the Navy fleet, the significant source of the information are stations of radio engineering investigation. All legislative objects report on a departmental accessory, fishing vessels in the Regional Center of Protection of Bioresources. Court and the objects which are carrying out coastal and transit in the Regional Center of Control Service of Movement of Courts and the organization of salvage operations. Information interchange between various departments should be the basis of activity of system of the total control of a coastal economic zone, and they have obligatory character for all departments. The offered technical system assumes use of all existing departmental and state technical system, navigation, communication, identification. Organizational structures, staffs and the regional centers already exist. System engineering is reduced to essential expansion of application of existing equipment, the organization of an interdepartmental exchange and introduction of new interspecific regulations of information interchange between organizational structures. The reference to the state corporation Rosabоронэкспорт guarantees you reception of the comprehensive information on all questions concerning the system of the total control of a coastal economic zone.